I felt, as a 16-year-old, I felt called to be a pastor, and so...
You knew at 16?
I did, yeah.
Was there a moment, do you remember, like...
You know, my pastor said, I think you've got the gifts to do this, and I was going to be a doctor or a lawyer or something else, and he said, I really think you should be a pastor. I'm like, I don't want to be a pastor. And he said, why don't you preach for me one Sunday and see what you think? So he had me preach the Sunday night service, and the sermon was horrible. I mean, it was really embarrassingly bad. But when I was finished, I thought, I think this is what God wants me to do with my life, and I never turned back from that. Mm-hmm. And I graduated from seminary, I was 23, and I told my bishop, I said, I'd really like to start a new church or give me a dying church somewhere. Well, instead they had me be an associate pastor for 2 years, which I really loved, at Central United Methodist at 52nd and Brookside, right by UMKC, and had a great time there. And the whole time I kept telling the superintendent, my boss in the hierarchy, I would love to start a new church around 135th and State Line. And after a year and a half of telling him this, I finally got a call in the spring of 1990. I was 25, and he said, okay, we're willing to send you out to start a new church. He said, the thing is, we don't have any money, and we don't have any land, and we don't have any people, and we don't even have a place for you to meet. But if you want to go start a new church around 135th and State Line with none of those things, we're happy to send you out, and we'll pay your associate pastor salary for the first year. At that time, I drove past the McGilly Chapel Funeral Home, and they were just getting ready to open. They weren't finished yet. And I thought, I wonder if we could have church in a mortuary. And I thought, that sounds a little depressing. I don't know. That very week, I got a phone call from Jim McGilly, who was opening the funeral home. And he said, I've heard you're starting a new church out in this area. You know, can I take you to lunch?
Wow.
I had this whole sales pitch memorized. You know, we'll split the offerings 50-50 with you. I don't know how much it's going to be, but whatever it is, we'll give half to rent the facility. And but my big pitch was going to be, and all of our members are going to die someday, and they're all going to need your services. This will be good for your future business.
That's your pitch, his business pitch. I get
exactly.
it. Okay.
But before I could say any of that, he said, I hear you're starting this new church, and I'm just wondering if you'd consider meeting in our funeral home.
You seem like such a positive person, that you seem driven and focused. Do you ever have moments where you feel discouraged?
Sometimes,
Like,
yeah.
what was the last time you were truly discouraged by whatever that was?
That's a good question. I remember some years ago I was preaching a sermon, and I was focusing on my hope that our congregation would be a place that would welcome gay and lesbian people. And we had about 800 people leave the church that year. And it was painful. I mean, I found myself thinking, maybe I'm not the right guy anymore. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I've failed God or failed this congregation. Maybe I need to go do something else.
When's the last time you shed a tear about something?
Well, the things that lead me to shed tears today are largely just when somebody's really hurting.
Last time you did?
Christmas Eve, one of our guys who sings in worship, and he's been very, very ill, and he sang on Christmas Eve, and I thought this may be the last time he ever sings, and he sang like he gave it was amazing, and I'm crying over there watching him singing, thinking, this may be his last Christmas Eve, and he's given everything he's got to be able to testify to his faith with song. It was beautiful. You're
in the process of growing, because there's this massive church.
Yeah.
What do you call that building? Is it the new sanctuary?
It's the new sanctuary.
Okay.
That's our permanent sanctuary.
Okay. Have you had critics on this one?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, what are some of the criticisms?
Yeah, well, most vocal criticism is, how could you spend that much money on a building? But when you look at it relative to everything else we're doing and what we're doing over the long term, I think most of our congregation understands this will be something that was money well spent. We built a home for this church that will be here, I really hope, hundreds of years from now.
Speaking of hundreds of years from now, do you have a plan for when you decide that this isn't you anymore? And is there any fear that without Pastor Adam Hamilton, Church of the Resurrection doesn't continue like it does with you?
Yeah, I just talked about this last Sunday. So we have a contingency plan in the event of my death. So if I had a heart attack, or somebody asked me once, what happens if the beer truck runs over you? I'm like, the beer truck?
Why the beer truck?
Why a beer truck? Why not a bus or something?
Right.
But so we have a contingency plan for that, and then we have a long-term plan for a succession plan for who takes my place.